Hey, good evening, everybody. It's Jim Prevost and Moose with Embrace the Shake. As promised, I told you I would talk about a couple things tonight. Irritability being one of them, anger, another, and apathy. And also going to talk about some caregiver strategies. Hey, Teresa, it's good to see you. Um, so first of all, I want to give the shout outs to the normal people. As you can see, I'm wearing hello Alex, good to see you, wearing the Whitebeard Canine t-shirt. That's Howard and Lisa Young of Whitebeard Canine. As I mentioned, every week they provide the training for our law enforcement agencies, canines, sheriff's department, and um, Shelby law enforcement, along with area agencies that utilize Howard's services. I'd like to thank Rescue 22, John Devine, Eric Ennis, and Angela Connor for all the things they do for the veterans community, providing service dogs for an array of medical issues that veterans encounter. Magic City Canine and Applause Your Paws with Dee Hout and her gang down there in Miami, Florida, doing a wonderful job providing canines through the inmate prison program. She does a great job taking rescue dogs from various pounds in the Miami area and surrounding areas and providing free training for those dogs through the prison program, and at the same time the inmates learn a valuable vocational profession, so when they get out they can be actively employed in the dog training community. And then I want to thank all the folks that donated money during our GoFundMe campaign for Biggie. I visited Biggie and Maddie this week on my return from Limestone, my out processing trip down to Limestone. And Maddie and Biggie are doing very well, still on the learning curve, but he's a beautiful dog, does a great job, is very responsive to Maddie's needs. He's had his hiccups, but he's had a tough life living on the streets, and then was saved by Dee and her crowd, and now and trained by Alex down there. And Biggie's just been a blessing for Maddie. So thanks again for those folks. And also Marin Lawrence, who does our communication and media work for the Embrace the Shake YouTube channel and Embrace the Shake Facebook page. Marion graduating from Limestone. She's a communication major, is getting ready to go to graduate school, and was an All-American academic in lacrosse. So Marion, thanks for everything you do. So like I said, I'm going to talk about some behavioral changes experienced because of Parkinson's disease. Now understand that Parkinson's has three branches, not only the typical Parkinson's disease itself, but Parkinsonisms, which are disorders that are movement disorders that are similar to those of Parkinson's disease: tremor, gait issues, balance, slowness of movement, and then Parkinsonian-like. And what Parkinsonian-like is having some of the same motor concerns as I mentioned before. And for example, the myoclonus that I have, which was initially thought as dyskinesia from Parkinson's disease, has been labeled as now myoclonus. Now, I want you to understand that I have not had the DAT scan yet that will confirm production of dopamine, but we're working with the new diagnosis. I do have the tremor, and I do have the dystonia as well. So I'm still part of the Parkinson's family, and to use my friend Daryl's analogy, same church, different pew. So in soliciting topics this week, one of the things that we encounter as Parkies is that Often the personality changes that occur during the Parkinsonian process, and I excuse Moose is chewing on his bone, but never get between the dog and his bone. The personality changes that we see, the mood changes, the apathy, the anxiety, the depression, is often really not talked about in the Parkinson's community. It's like a offshoot or part of. But tonight I want to talk about it as the major topic, and I want to kind of give you the biology about it, and I want to give you some additional information about the chemistries that are involved and the inside, the personal feelings that somebody with Parkinson's would, how would I say, encounter, okay? As you can slow, I'm operating a little slow tonight. Medication I'm taking is taking a little bit to get me rolling here, but thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. Someday soon we'll get when this COVID virus gets under control, we can still do social distancing, but I would like Moose to meet you. So I want to talk about the personality changes, and I would like for you to understand just right off the get-go that anger, irritability, depression, and anxiety often are seen in the Parkinson's patient before the motor disorder shows up. So when you go for your initial visit, or you go to a movement specialist, your family practitioner, your internist, or whoever, often if you talk to them about, I get real irritated easy, things are tough at work, I just get irritated, I'm not sleeping well, I'm not eating right, not getting any exercise, and then your spouse or your partner, loved one, how do I deal with this? There's been some mood changes, and a lot of time it's dashed off to those factors I just mentioned: work, lack of sleep, not eating right, which really are subsymptoms or the smaller noticed symptoms of Parkinson's disease, of the Parkinson behaviors. At the same time, I'm not saying that if you are exhibiting those, you don't have Parkinson's. It's just that when you start putting the Parkinson's puzzle together, then these are the things that you should note in your mental journal or your physical journal of signs and symptoms. In my situation was, I started losing the ability to smell, and I lost the ability to taste. Well, that's also signs of post-concussion syndrome, and I've had 7 concussions, so I figured, that's just part of it, and just move on. But the anxiety, the nervousness that you experience is often caused by you're noticing within yourself, and you keep it to yourself, that it's difficult for you to do things that you used to be able to do. So you develop some anxiety of like, what's going on? I'm not doing well. And then the irritability that things are getting more complicated. In addition to that, with the irritability and the anxiety, apathy may all of a sudden appear. And the apathy is often caused by interrupted sleep, a lack of exercise, the ongoing fatigue that folks with Parkinson's, movement disorders, and MS and Alzheimer's often experience. And what that fatigue that I'm talking about is because they haven't had the ability to recharge from sleep and recharge from nutrition and recharge from exercise, they're having to work overtime to do the normal processes of life. So it's causing an increase in the mental fatigue, which is also causing a physical fatigue issue. And here's the other thing about that. And I know I'm kind of peeling through this, but I want to set a base up here. The death of the cells in the brain that cause or create the dopamine, the cells in the brain that create the dopamine, which are responsible for movement, are also responsible for mood. Therefore, if those cells in the brain are not producing enough dopamine, or the dopamine is not being used appropriately, or the right consistency, of dopamine is not being, I'm going to get something here, is not of normal function, then if that is happening, it's also affecting mood. So motor and mood. Therefore, when they put you on dopamine, all of a sudden you feel better. You have better movement, you have better mood, as you get adjusted to the medication. The negatives or the contraindications of that are also that the medication that they give you for dopamine and other medications to help you with the progression of the disease process also can cause psychosis. Okay? They can also cause neuroticism, which is negative behavior, negative thoughts. Therefore, what happens is the medication that they are giving you to help you do better can also have a negative effect and make you worse on one end. Better motor, different type of mood issues, behavioral issues. Lose your filter, become withdrawn. Depression runs rampant in our population. So laying that base down, anxiety, irritability usually go hand in hand. Anger, depression, and anxiety go hand in hand. The anxiety-depression cycle, the anger-irritability cycle, and the anxiety kind of goes with both. And to illustrate this, I'll give you a real-life example. I believe I've told this before. If I have, I apologize. I put some lights up at my mother's house many years ago. It got time to replace those lights, and it wasn't long after I was having some issues and was diagnosed. I couldn't put those very same lights up that I put up before because I couldn't work the tools with my hands and coordinate the movements of two hands at once working. Therefore, it was difficult for me to do that. Therefore, I got irritated with myself, and the famous line came out, "Why is everything got to be so much more difficult?" And before I understood what was going on, I knew that the dopamine response was not allowing the motor to work, but I really wasn't very aware that the dopamine response was also contributing to the irritability because of the behavior. It was the motor response wasn't working, I wasn't able to adapt to it, and because I had low levels of dopamine, I wasn't able to respond accordingly with a quality coping behavior. That's something that we lose with MS, Alzheimer's, and movement disorders, is that we start losing our abilities to pull up the file of coping strategies. And until they can get your medication straight, until you can get into a support group, until you can get some psychosocial help if you decide to go that route, or some neuropsychiatric help, then difficulties with coping skills um, um, is a common problem. And when you have difficulties with coping skills, it increases your stress, increases your anxiety, and increases your irritability. So to move on, I've laid that platform down. And as you know, everything I'm talking about is research-based. The other things I want to talk about that go along with that personality change that you may see with folks with the movement disorders, Alzheimer's, and MS, is that there is a social withdrawal. It's unbeknownst to us. We typically don't know that we are drawing back. Hello, Renee, it's good to see you. Sadie, it's good to see you as well. We don't know that we're kind of withdrawing from social engagement. It's not something that we intend to do, although some intend to do it. But what happens is that because we're so focused on trying to work through this, that we rely from our social stimuli, from our families and our caregiver, and also we focus on the disease process itself and the disease, and that becomes our social environment. Therefore, we become disengaged. And when we become disengaged, we lose the benefit of the social interaction. We also become anxious, so to speak, because of being fearful of being noticed, that there is something just not right. Also, we become very cognizant sometimes of that. I don't want to embarrass my family. I don't want to embarrass myself. Example, before I went to see Lori McKee for my swallowing disorder, I would eat and drool. And when I was on the board of trustees at Limestone, and we were going through the presidential process, selection of our great president, Dr. Parker, and we were having meals, I was very conscientious about always having a handkerchief or a napkin in my hand and making sure after I ate my food, every bite, I would just make sure I would kind of blot up to make sure I wasn't having a salivary reaction. And once I went to speech, that resolved itself. But I still at times make sure I always have that napkin in my hand and blot. You may have seen that when I was at your house for lunch there, Sadie and Molly. But those are the things that just stick with us, that we do to hack or to make sure we don't embarrass ourselves. Another thing is that because a lot of us lose the ability to blink, often like regular folks, we drop our heads down and we look at people momentarily, and as you can see, I'm moving my head, it makes my eyes look like they have a short blink reflex. Well, I don't blink much. And that's why you see folks with Parkinson's and movement disorders often are looking down, and this is what we see of you here. We rarely look at you in your face. So those are the social apprehension things that one may encounter. Therefore, they rather stay home instead of going out and possibly cause a problem. Okay? So one of the write-ins that I had was, okay, talk a little bit about irritability, talk a little bit about anger, talk a little bit about anxiety, and to talk about that from the Parkinson's disease perspective, and I think I've done that. But I would like for you to look at one other perspective, and that is the caretaker's perspective, the caregiver, okay? understand this as well, is that most folks with Parkinson's disease for the rest of their life are going through the 5 stages of grief constantly. Okay? What I mean is, usually after we are diagnosed, we immediately go into denial, we get into that anger stage, and then we start bargaining. And we stay in that bargaining stage for the longest period of time. And then as we see ourselves slip, we bounce between anger, bargaining, and depression. Not necessarily clinical, but a depression in our symptoms, a depression in our body's function, and a psychosocial depression as well. Because, folks, Parkinson's disease is also labeled as a neuropsychiatric disorder because of the association with mental health issues. And I don't know many folks that have Parkinson's, really the ones that I know, and I say this with respect, they don't accept it. They don't say, well, this is it, I'm stuck with it, this is all I can do. Because the ones that I talk with see that as a way of giving up versus a way of fighting. They recognize it versus accept it. And I know that's just a play on words. But any strategy to cope. Any strategy to cope. Okay? We've talked about the biology of it. And again, mental health issues, anxiety, depression, anger, and irritability are often the precursors to the diagnosis of Parkinson's, because you go to the doctor's office and you fill out that piece of paper that has the 44 signs, and you check mark what you're experiencing, and then you do some tests in the office, and then you do some motor tests and some cognition tests and some reaction time testing, and that's when everything's put together. But depression, anxiety, and anger, the mood changes can also be the side effects of the medication, like I've already said, the psychosis in itself. The medication can also create problems with behavior such as excessive buying, gambling, buying a fast car. Let's say you drive a Ford Explorer like I do, and you're like, man, I'm 60 years old, I'm retired, I'm drawing my retirement. You know, I'm gonna finally buy that Corvette. And that's not something that you would normally do. You have to look at the medications to see what has brought that on. In addition to that, folks that have Parkinson's disease that are taking medications, and same with Alzheimer's and MS, they have a tendency to supplement their medications because they see something in an article like increased magnesium, which is a fact, does help with the chemical bonding of medications in the brain, and that shelter down effect into the musculature and the neurological network. Magnesium does help bond, it does work, okay? But the person with Parkinson's would take more magnesium than what's recommended because more is better. So it does interfere with our thinking processes. It does interfere with our personality. It does interfere with our activities of daily living. And medications can alter the, quote, normal daily behaviors that we are accustomed to. Another thing is your living circumstances change. Getting dressed, activities of daily living, your habits, your organizational schedule, exercise, eating, it all changes. It all changes because your executive skills, your organizational skills are usually the first to be compromised with Parkinson's in the brain other than the motor. And that goes back to the dopamine, and it goes back to the other chemicals in the brain that are associated with the thought processes, okay? And folks, for caregivers, and this is directed to you, I'd like for you to accept and recognize this, that these are the 6 things that you will see more often in Parkinson's patients than any other neuropsychiatric, neuropsychological, or movement disorder. Not necessarily movement disorder, but other neurological disorders. Anxiety, dysphoria, which is, uneasiness or unhappy with life, irritability, pessimism, sadness, and suicidal thoughts. Folks with Parkinson's have a higher rate of suicidal thoughts and a higher rate of suicide, okay, than any of the other movement disorders. All right, between 45 and 62% of Parkinson's patients have suicidal thoughts. Some of that's brought on by medication, the disease process. So the mental health check, caregivers, has to be every single day. So I'm going to provide some skills that I've researched that can help the caregiver deal with all of that I talked about. Okay? From an article in our Parkinson's News, it's called The Grouch and Toots, Dealing with Irritability. In this article, it also talks about using Toots strategies to deal with not only irritability, but anxiety. Okay? Dealing with the broken filter of social behavior. Toots does not help much with depression, okay? But it does help you take a measure of step back and think for a minute to see if those early warning signs are showing up. So what TOOTS stands for, it is an acronym for Timeout on the Spot, okay? Here's a TOOTS philosophy, or a TOOTS measure, okay, for Alzheimer's. That's simple. You'll never win an argument. Don't argue, agree. That immediately de-escalates. Take your time, and you can go back and revisit that issue at a later time when the escalation that was starting has subsided, when it's a better time, when everybody's calmed down, when we have a clearer mind. Okay? A TOOTS measure for irritability is to listen. Let's say you have an episode with you're the caregiver for a Parkinson's patient, a person with Parkinson's disease, and they notice that they are starting to shuffle, that they're not able to pick their feet up like they used to. And they don't want to go out and walk that day. And you being the caregiver, you say, well, it's a good idea that we get out and walk, and, maybe the more we walk, the more that your legs will become stronger. You'll get your steps back, and you won't shuffle as much. You're trying to be as kind as you can be, but you said shuffle, walk more, and you provided a solution for something that they don't want to deal with, such as the shuffling. So, take your time out, step back from that situation, listen to what they're telling you, and focus and go do something else. You know that the exercise is better for them, so what do? You wait a while, you come back and say, hey hon, I'm going outside to take a walk around the cul-de-sac, was wondering if you'd like to go. And your loved one said, well, I don't know about that, I'm shuffling a lot. Well, that'll be fine. I'd like to get some exercise and I'd like to have you along. I'd like to talk. Let's get outside and enjoy this weather. You're diverting the attention away. You have a clear coping mechanism that you can demonstrate, and you can give them a coping mechanism by saying, by looking at it from the perspective, hey, it's nice outside. Let's go enjoy it. It really doesn't matter that I shuffle. I can still go outside and enjoy it. So, time out, right on the spot where the problem occurs, step back, go to another task or another thing in your life, or go to another topic and revisit that a little bit later when you have a clearer head and where you can think of a strategy that will make it easier for the person with Parkinson's to handle it. Going outside and enjoying the weather, I shuffle. We can still go outside and enjoy the weather. It's a really lovely day outside. That shuffling has now become less of a barrier because of your coping strategy and mindfulness to focus on the weather, and that you want them with you because they are important to you and that you enjoy them no matter what. The other thing is, when the use of Toots principle, especially with irritability, when you see your Parkinson's patient, your Parkinson's loved one, get irritated and not being able to do the skill, to do something, don't jump in to do it for them. Step back and watch what they do and how they handle it. And if they continue to drive on and keep doing the skill, do they effectively complete it to their satisfaction? Not to yours, but to theirs. And if they complete it to a point and finally give up on it, compliment what they've accomplished and leave it alone. Then come back to that same skill again and say, for example, hey Jim, are you finished working on this, putting this lamp together? Yeah, I got to a certain point, I just got stuck on it. Well, why don't you show me how to put it together? Why don't you show me how to do it? Help me do it. I really need your help since you've done so much. Now they become the teacher, you become the learner, and during the course of that task, you're turning over the responsibility of fixing that lamp back to them as you co-accomplish that goal. So co-accomplishing is also a part of time out on the spot. You step away, leave it alone, and then come back to it and recall it back to them. Like, are you done doing this? I gave up on it. Invite them to show you how to do it. Now it becomes a us activity, a we activity, instead of you can't do it and I gotta fix it. So that's Toots in a short summation. The final words are this, okay? Caregivers. You got the hardest job of all, especially if you're an in-home caregiver. And the reason I say that is because 24/7, 365. You live the disease. You adapt to the disease. You become part of the disease. And what I mean become part of it is because it is demonstrated in the research that those who are exposed to a neurological disorder, a neuropsychological disorder, or a neuropsychiatric disorder over a prolonged period of time develop diminished capacities themselves in motor, cognition, and organization. Motor, cognitive, and organization. Here is the tool, with an S, the tools to use to help you not develop some of the side effects from being a caregiver. Item number 1, take care of yourself every single day. Live by a schedule. We eat at this time, we take our medication this time, we have another meal this time, we go out this time. Okay? If you help yourself by taking care of yourself first, eating right, working on your sleep habits, exercising, okay, being social, and you include your Parky in all of that, you will lessen what's going on in their disease process, and you will not experience at the same level of those that don't practice these skills as far as the side effects of the disease. Have a written schedule. Put it out on the countertop, on the refrigerator, and live by it. Every day, eat your 3 squares and your 2 snacks. Every day, exercise. Every day, do your house chores. Every day, get up and do your hair, put your makeup on, or put your clothes on, guys. Make sure that you're dressed up, ready to roll, and get out and do all the normalcies of life you can, and include the person that is needing your caregiving skills. Include them, socialization, socialization, and socialization. And I assure you that if you do that, in addition to toots, and in addition to saying to the person that you're working with, I got to step away for about 15 minutes. I got to take a break. I got to relax. And they may say to you, oh, it's because of me? No, it's because of me. I don't like the way I'm feeling right now. I want to have a clearer head, and I want to be of a better attitude, and I want to be better for you. That's taking care of yourself. Please follow those skills. If you need any more information, please shoot me an email at jim.prevost@gmail.com. You can reach me on Messenger, and I'll send all this information to you in the links. I sent a link out today, the mood guide from the Parkinson's Association. It provides a guide on all the different types of mood disorders that are associated with Parkinson's as underlying symptoms, and also the movement disorders, all the different medications. If you need any help with all that, let me know. I'm going to call it a night here. It's time to move on, get to something else in your lives. Thank you, fire, EMS, and law enforcement for what you do. All of our mercantile workers that are just right on the front lines, along with our health workers, by providing our merchandise that we need for our daily activities, and our food and our gas and our car repairs, and just so many services they offer. I personally want to thank the healthcare workers as a former healthcare worker for what you do and the recognition that you deserve. We can never thank you enough for what you can do. I also want to thank the people at Limestone College for everything they did for me and over the past 2 years that I was there in Moose, just making me feel at home and helping along the way adapt to having a service dog. And I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Parker and his leadership during the COVID crisis and the leadership he's always given our college and soon university. But Limestone really stepped it up when the COVID crisis came in, and our students were first. And I'd just like to thank Dr. Parker and his administration and the cabinet for taking care of my college, our college. And congratulations to our seniors, high school seniors and our college seniors. Everybody remember and never forget, embrace the shake.